Outrage Farming is a core component of the Sky News business model. With an election fast approaching, you can guarantee that you'll see plenty of examples headed your way in the coming months. Outrage farming, rage baiting, whatever you want to call it. It's a manipulation tactic used to provoke outrage with the goal of increasing engagement, eyeballs on content, support and ultimately revenue. It is a lucrative business model because it works. When it comes to manipulating its audience to elicit a response to a headline though, Sky News really have the market cornered. Here's a textbook example. The Sky News headline reads, Prime Minister Anthony Albanese scheduled $100,000 VIP dinner ahead of Cyclone Alfred before Cabinet Ministers condemned opposition leader Peter Dutton for fundraiser. Now the wording there seems to intentionally leave room for a lot of interpretation. In my view, Sky are inviting comparisons between Dutton and Albanese's behaviour here. When that link is pushed out to social media, where you'll find the bulk of the online discussion takes place, the headline Sky have set there is the slightly more, let's say, inflammatory. Hypocrisy. Albanese's $100,000 VIP dinner revealed after government criticises Dutton fundraiser. And that's a far blunter version of the main headline, removing any doubt as to Sky's intention, I think. Now, Sky rely on their headlines to do a lot of the heavy lifting, leaving the opener just vague enough to invite the reader to fill in their own gaps. Hypocrisy? Okay, why exactly? Did these two guys do the same thing? The opening paragraph. The government has been accused of hypocrisy after it was revealed Prime Minister Anthony Albanese planned to attend a swanky $100,000 VIP dinner ahead of the looming threat of ex-tropical cyclone Alfred. There's one key word in there you might have noticed. Planned. Albanese planned to attend. We then go to the source of the story, which was the Nightly. And once you read that, you understand that whilst the Prime Minister did have a fundraiser planned the day after Dutton found himself in hot water for his poor judgment, the PM's staff decided to delay the PM's fundraiser for a fortnight. Never mind though, Sky seemed to work hard to generate a false equivalence, where an equivalence doesn't exist. Just a quick recap, Peter Dutton was in his electorate, which was in the path of a cyclone on the Tuesday morning, telling us all about the seriousness of what was coming.
Thank you to the Premier for the briefing that he and the Queensland Police Service have provided to me this morning. It's certainly tracking to be a very major event for Queensland. This is a very serious event and people need to heed the words and the advice of the Premier very carefully.
He then jumped straight on a plane, leaving his electorate behind to fly down to Sydney for a lunch with a property developer with what sounds like a donation carrot dangled out in front of him, before heading to another fundraiser to pass the hat around to Sydney's rich list. He had other stuff lined up that was then cancelled after the whole brouhaha over his billionaire donor party. Sorry, definitely not a party, just a fundraising dinner. Whether he'd have cancelled those other fundraisers if he hadn't been found out or not, I guess we'll never really know. Albanese essentially flew into Brisbane as Dutton was leaving Brisbane. Rather than fly back to Sydney to attend his fundraiser, Albanese at least had enough common sense to postpone it for a fortnight. You can see how the two things are different, right? We have one guy who represents an electorate in the path of a cyclone skipping town to attend fundraising events in the midst of a natural disaster. While you have another guy postponing his fundraiser and clearing his calendar until the threat's passed. The fact is, Peter Dutton could have avoided the condemnation had he just exercised a little bit of common sense. He's a politician. He should understand optics, if nothing else. And I mean, at times he demonstrates that he does, at least to a certain degree. I mean, just look at the big song and dance he made about how the PM would have been tin-eared if he were to have called an election with a cyclone approaching.
There's still concerns about what happens with flows down the Brisbane River and what that could mean for people that are affected by flooding of the Brisbane River and other river systems, obviously across the southeast corner. There will be people waiting for waters to recede. There will be swift water rescues. There will be people cleaning out their houses or their businesses, and some people will have lost everything. That's the reality of these weather events. And to go to an election at that stage, at that time, I think the Prime Minister would have a tin ear to do that.
Yeah,
so
I do
it's
too.
not due until the 17th of May. So he's got plenty of time to sort out when it is, but he may well have been intending to go this weekend, but I think it is difficult in the circumstances, and I think people probably want from their Prime Minister governing, not campaigning at a time like this.
But hypocrisy? hypocrisy would have been had Albo not pushed his fundraiser back a week. And you can only imagine the hysteria we'd have witnessed had Albo not postponed and he'd flown back to Sydney for a high-priced dinner while the people of Queensland prepared for the worst. Now that would have generated some outrage. Not that it really matters though, because when Sky present news in this fashion, there's plenty of people that just skim the headline and nothing more. For those people, Albo's guilty as sin. Doesn't really matter what he actually did.
The Albanese government has been labelled hypocritical after it was revealed by the Nightly the Prime Minister had a $100,000 VIP fundraising dinner scheduled in the days before ex-tropical cyclone Alfred made landfall. Members of the Liberal Party have reacted strongly to the news after senior government ministers attacked Peter Dutton for fundraising as the cyclone approached.
There may have been a little criticism around the fundraising component, but in general I think it was the fact that Dutton abandoned his electorate in the face of a cyclone. I think really that's what led to most of the criticism. Tin ear and all that.
So you know how Peter Dutton skipped town to go to a Liberal Party fundraiser in Sydney when we were all getting ready for the cyclone and floods? Well, Pete says it was okay because he wasn't going to a party with Sydney billionaires. He was going to a fundraiser with billionaires.
Came under some criticism for going to a Justin Hems party last week, leaving Queensland. Why'd you go to that?
Well, Pete, it wasn't a party. It was a fundraising dinner.
What? So Peter Dutton thinks it's okay to leave his community behind for a fundraiser as long as it's not a party? A fundraiser that made $500,000 for the Liberal Party while he was lecturing the Prime Minister to focus on governing, not campaigning. At the same time, Peter Dutton's shadow minister was talking about making job cuts at our emergency services agencies in the middle of a cyclone.
The opposition won't rule out cutting jobs at the National Emergency Management Agency if they win the federal election.
We're still very much going through the process of looking at there may be redundancies. I'm not going to preempt any of that work.
Peter Dutton, he doesn't hold a sandbag, but he does hold a fundraiser, and he will make cuts to the services we depend on, even in emergencies.
I mean, everyone fundraisers, right?
You know, everyone does have fundraisers. It's an election.
In all this, though, there is a story here worthy of some outrage. It's just not the story Sky News are all that interested in covering. The real story here is that despite promising to take big money out of politics, and Labor and the Coalition sharing a rare and fleeting moment of bipartisanship to pass their electoral reforms bill, it's clear from the actions of both major party leaders that big money is going nowhere, and cash for access is still very much a thing.
Members of Parliament and senior leaders do go to fundraising dinners. That's the nature of how we fund elections in this country. It's what funds the political ads that'll soon litter Sky News for weeks and weeks on end. We, as the Albanese government, have taken some really serious steps to try and reduce the influence of big money in elections. We put that through the Parliament just a month ago, and it's a good thing we did. And I also give credit to the Coalition for their work in making sure that we can have a more robust, higher integrity electoral system for the future.
The reality is that leaders of both the major parties are busy flying around the country pimping themselves out to donors and lobbyists. To me, that's the part that's deserving of more than a little bit of outrage.
Don't forget to like, comment and subscribe.